Hey guys.
Hey, Yuri. So Nestor's getting ready, and he's going to lead the session today.
Awesome.
Do we have the standard linked in the thread? It's just that I have so many tabs open.
Yeah, I put it in
Ah,
the. Yeah, I did put it in the private meeting notes
okay,
thread.
gotcha. Okay. All right, so I share my screen. Okay. So yesterday. Aha. So, uh, I'd I'd like to get your thoughts on this. So essentially, uh, what we were discussing with Jordan yesterday was that we should explain um, the WebAssembly runtime as a process, um, and that we should actually mention like which data goes where and in which format, but we don't specify like how the actual encoding decoding happens if it happens. So the flow part of the data translation standard should actually be here. And the data translation standard would be reduced to a translation specific uh, details standard, if that makes sense. So what I've started to do yesterday was essentially copying the mermaid chart that we had on the data translation standard and start in a simpler, a bit more superficial way describe how the process goes. Um, so any thoughts on that so far?
Just a random note from yesterday. I googled a bit about serialization and encoding, and I guess the distinction is that serialization is transforming something into, like, transforming an object into its binary representation in a way, while
Mm-hmm.
encoding is more converting data from one format to another, like character encoding for URLs and things like that. For example, MessagePack mentions that it's a serialization standard, a serialization library, but it also does encoding. It's kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
And I still think data translation fits as a name. But in a lot of places where we use encode or MessagePack encode, serialize might be a better word.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Uh, we should make sure that we use the correct term in the in the draft. Um,
We can
anyways,
do that last.
y-
I just lightly Googled.
yeah. Anyways, so as of right now, uh, what I have is the following, which says the invoker calls export wrap invoke. So Jordan was saying yesterday that we should um, be explicit when mentioning which exports and imports are called where, because they are part of the standard. Like their implementation is not, but they like what they do and their names are. So
Yep.
so yeah. So I've started by saying the invoker equals export wrap invoke, which is a module's exposed entry point to perform invocations. Then inside the wrap export, the wrap invoke args import is called, which makes the invoker write the invoked method's name as a UTF-8 string and its arguments, message pack encoded, to shared memory. There was a module that reads the method name, environment, and arguments from memory. And yeah, I'm guessing that what goes after would probably be simply it executes the function and then I can move on to the rest. But there's this aside from the phrasing and choice of words, like there's this way of drafting sounds good to you all.
Looks good to me.
Okay, great. In that case, then let's just continue. Western wrapper. Yeah, like I tend to forget like what happens exactly after. Yeah, I'm gonna just gonna see what it does. Okay. Gotcha. So yeah, we
Could
serialize this.
could you use the diagram to figure out what's going on? Because if you can't, I think we need to improve the diagram.
Okay, so boom, wrap invoke, create the buffers, pointers back, invoke args, right, which is this import. Cool. Store method and args in shared memory, correct. Get method from args, cool. Decode method name, called invoke method. Yeah, we are here. Encode result, yes. We don't explain the how, and nor we should, but what it is important to mention is that the result, whoops, Yeah. Invoke result. Ah, okay. So this only happens if it's successful. Um,
Wait, could you go back for a second?
here?
If FN, oh, if it exists, not if it's
Mm-hmm.
successful, I guess. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but I'm guessing that if this throws, if it panics, it it, it doesn't return anything, right?
It doesn't catch it, yeah. It's caught in the client, I think.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Uh, so should I say if the invocation yields a result, or should I say if the invocation is successful and leave that?
I mean,
Uh,
isn't it neither? If there's a function, then it. Hmm. I mean, if the invocation, throws or doesn't return a result, then it just breaks, throws completely. I'm not sure we should mention that case because that's like an unhandled exception.
does it actually throw completely?
I mean, I don't think there's any error handling. Like you can't catch in assembly in Go assembly.
You're right. Yeah, you're right. It just throws. It just throws and like breaks the execution process altogether
Yeah, it's caught in the client.
in the
Go.
client. Yeah. So if the then if the invocation succeeds,
Hello guys, sorry for being late.
I believe this is also better wording if we ever want to include the option of returning void.
right? Ah, no. This is if the function exists.
Yeah. If it breaks, it just breaks. There's no error handling.
If exactly, if it breaks, and that's it. This is if it doesn't find the invoke function, which happens almost never.
Unless the wait, I mean, unless you pass in the wrong function name, right?
Yeah, yeah. Right. Okay. So
It's just a basic string, so that can happen often.
yeah. So then I'm not gonna. Okay. I'll see later how we include that section because there is an involved import there, um, but yeah, if it if it breaks, it breaks. Um, and written to shared memory.
Look at the diagram.
Right.
Sorry, I'm just trying to force the
Yeah.
diagram because
Yeah.
if you can't learn from it easier than the code, then it's kind of bad diagram. But I think we can.
Right. Yeah. So I just want to make sure about what this invoke result does, because in my logic, by looking at the diagram, I am assuming that what this does is simply reading from shared memory on the wrapper runtime. Uh,
Oh, I think
so
that's after it. So that function returns the pointer and the length, which actually we didn't mention on the diagram. But after that, there's the arrow that says read from memory, read from buffer.
yeah, yeah, that's what this does, and this happens post writing, as you say. So where does the result get actually written?
Before that, can you look at the diagram for a second? You see the encode result, and then create buffer for encoded result, and it returns a pointer. That's when you write that thing.
Okay, got it.
Actually,
Okay.
I'm now a bit confused. Let's look at that code.
No. Yeah, it's here. Yeah, it's here, right?
Yeah, I think on the diagram we're just missing that step of writing to the buffer,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm not mistaken.
With the with the serialize function. It's just that it's weird because the deserialize function does not read from memory, but the serialize function does write to memory.
Yeah. Wait, deserialize doesn't read from memory?
No, I think that happens before. Um,
I think it.
Yeah, it happens before. You just pass the buffer there.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, look. So
It I think it happens during something like invoke or yeah that it happens during invoke sets sequence.
yeah, in the entry part. Yeah, exactly. So, yeah,
But isn't that reading from memory, reading from the buffer? That's a shared buffer. I mean, everything's shared in the assembly side.
well,
Or are we talking about something else?
I'm talking about like performing the actual the actual writing, because here we first read from.
Oh, writing happens on the client side.
No. I mean, writing of the arguments and the method name and the environment happens client side, but the writing of the result does not.
Yeah. The writing on the result happens at the same time we serialize the result. I think we serialize directly to the buffer.
Exactly.
Which means the diagram is slightly misordered. I think we mentioned encode result and then create buffer instead of create buffer and then encode result to buffer.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you see what happens here in this serialize set data part, yeah, like here we create the buffer. And then after the buffer has been created,
No, on that same place we also serialize into it.
Yeah.
And then just return the pointer.
Yeah, exactly. So we serialize and create the buffer in the same function. Okay. Interesting. So this happens at the same time when writing the result, but when reading the arguments, this happens at separate times. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, okay. Yeah, add a section here. So and then what does the boolean actually? It doesn't actually. I mean, if the execution happens, it returns true, but if it breaks, it breaks. So the only part where it returns false is if the function isn't found.
Yeah.
But since we haven't expanded on that possibility yet, this boolean is almost like just a placeholder.
I'm not even sure why we write the message there instead of the client. Like, I guess in the future we might customize it with custom bindings, but right now it might make more sense just to return false and save a bit of code then.
So after that, return success boolean, result buffer, Result buffer.
Yeah, because the WASM wrapper actually returns the buffer. It never deserializes the buffer.
Right.
Which is kind of weird.
Process invoke result. Invoke result is missing. So when does this get deserialized?
In the client. So the WASM wrapper itself always returns a buffer, and the plugin wrapper always returns the actual deserialized object, I think. I was looking at that yesterday. And then the client in the invoke function actually deserializes it. So look at where's the result, process result, go down, down, see, encoded true.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Encoded true, yeah, line 217. Yeah, you see, there's no place where it says encoded false. That's why, because it always returns the buffer. And then the client in its invoke function actually deserializes it.
Yeah, but
Ah.
it can be invoked, encode false in case of plugin, right?
Yeah,
Some
but
of
that's in the
them.
plugin wrapper, and I think in the plugin wrapper it's always false. So the
Yeah.
opposite.
And the process happens a bit differently. Also.
Yeah, so I think this is just encode result is specific to client standard, not the wrapper or runtime standard, because in runtime it will be fixed, right?
Yeah,
Right.
I
So
think that's correct. Yeah, could be still part of the data translation, but maybe not of the wrapper runtime.
yeah. So this is indeed the final step.
And just because we're talking about it right now, like yesterday, I was wondering, like, does it even make sense that the WASM wrapper always returns the encoded result, but the plugin wrapper always returns the decoded result? Since they both inherit from the wrapper class, it's kind of weird that you do not know the return type. But then I realized, yeah, you kind of need that because it makes sense to keep the wrapper type, plugin or WASM, handle whatever it's easiest, whatever's the fastest. So, in WASM, it's always encoded. You don't have to waste time decoding, and in the plugin, you don't have to waste time encoding, and handle that outside of it. So in the client or whatever else. So just some of my thoughts from yesterday on this.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that makes sense.
Like
and
I almost
I
moved the decoding there, but I figured that didn't make sense.
yeah, and I think that was the reason Jordan created this invocable, because we were also facing some issue with no decode that we had previously. So
Ah, interesting. Okay, makes sense.
yeah, that was the reason to have this.
It is a bit weird that the client does it instead of some other class, like a wraparound around it, but sure.
Hmm. Yeah, but I think it makes sense because we would want to do that at last, right, when everything is done.
Yeah, but you can still do it in a separate class, maybe. But for now, it's fine. It's just like a hunch, maybe potentially. Just ignore it. But we could
Okay.
refactor it in like a method or something instead of the invoke function.
Okay, so uh, it'd be great if you could all take a look at the writing, and together we can try to make the writing a bit better and more or less specific in the places where it needs to. Because I think that the whole process is roughly described here, at least roughly, but it is complete in the sense that that this is all that entails the WebAssembly runtime related process. We haven't touched on sub invocations though, and on implementations, like get implementations, for example.
What about environment? I guess that's part of the invocation.
The what, sorry?
Environment.
Ah, uh, well, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Probably a dumb question. Wouldn't the environment have like their own standard? Yeah, like models or environment.
I mean, I'd like to see it part of the wrapper runtime, and only if it makes sense, then move it outside.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we gotta talk about it. Doesn't matter how we structure it. So yeah, I guess
Yeah,
it's a good idea to start kicking it off with this.
we need to at least mention it, like data translation, right?
See,
It could be
see,
a
see,
separate standard, but
see. Totally agree with you.
Okay, I think that the environment, environ, no, this happens all in the client.
Will just be env.
Yeah, yeah. But I want to see because I think it is eagerly encoded. No, am I crazy?
should be.
So the invoker gets the environment by URI, but
You
it's
can
not
find it in wrapper resolver.
wrapper resolver.
You can find it also by file. I don't stick stuff in, in more than one class in a file. Should be there. Uh,
I can't find it.
Give me a second. You can go to core resolvers.
Yeah, should be in core URI resolution resolvers. I think
Eh,
if you go to the folder structure, like click,
Yeah.
It's
it's
easier.
see,
Oh,
yeah,
you are a
core
resolver wrapper.
is the name of the
Okay.
file.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
So down below, when you find the wrapper, the manifest, you do get env from URI resolution stack, and then you put it inside of the create wrapper function, which just I think passes it to the wasm wrapper class.
I mean, yeah, but this is just a plain object, right? Like it's not being encoded as a string or anything.
Yeah,
Why am
that
I?
probably happens in wasm wrapper.
Oh,
This is just the start of it. Oh, there it
Ha!
is.
Here's what happens. Okay. Uh, and the arcs are also eagerly encoded. Uh, well, well, no. It just happens at the start of the invocation.
Interesting. I think a slight optimization for the environment would be to only encode it if it's being queried, I guess, or if you know somehow. So, for example, when you try to fetch it from the client, because I think client still needs to get the pointer
Yeah.
or create a buffer, probably.
Yeah, we do the same thing as that we do with arguments. We even have like imports for it.
Yeah, but our arguments are always needed, but the environment is only in some functions, and we don't know until the WASM requests it. So environment could be like a singleton pattern, where once you need it, you create it, and then it's only created once.
Right. Right. Okay. Noted. But this should also probably be stated. Calls wrap invoke. No, this happens before, which is a module. And its arguments. Well, this actually happens here.
Isn't it before that? Before wrapping?
Before what, sorry?
Before the wrap invoke, like
Yeah,
when
yeah.
creating the memory. We don't have a section for that. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we do. uh, we do, but we need to structure this better. After we have all the information written.
Okay. Yeah. Still, I think this happens before the line 42, right? 30. What is it? 32. Before the wrap
Yeah.
invoke.
Yep.
All right. So after in the next sentence when it says then inside the wrap export, we should like add like a clarification of what wrap export is if it's not already like discussed earlier in the document.
Oh, this is actually a mistake. This export is this.
Okay.
Yeah.
I kind of thought it might have been, but I wasn't totally sure. And yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
It might be nice though to have like a section about what are imports, exports, maybe like a brief section.
Yes, that's true.
Right. Okay.
Especially to note that there's an underscore and an underscore
Sí,
pattern.
sí, muy cierto.
Loading. Thank you for the instantiation. Right. Yeah. The writing in this paragraph is so messy. There was some
You can
other
always
exposition.
reword it.
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah, I'll leave it for later.
Hey guys, sorry I'm late. How's it going?
Hey, oh good. So to give you a recap, we've been we have been basically finishing the rough draft on writing this like as a full process, and in the middle of the explanation of how the process goes, explaining like which data in which format goes where and which imports and which exports are called.
Cool. Yeah,
Um,
that's okay. I can read through, but thank you for the recap.
okay. Yeah, for sure. Okay. So we were saying that we were gonna. Okay. Yeah. The environment. Uh, mm, no. This is an implementation detail.
One nitpick and one suggestion. It says the invoker gets the environment configuration object. It's more like it's provided to it through the arguments.
Right, because
Gets
yeah,
kind of implies that it fetches it from somewhere.
yeah.
But more importantly, is it the invoker or the invocable? Like it's in the wasn't wrapper, right?
um, I know that we have had this discussion before, but I don't remember the conclusion. So, is the Wasm wrapper class the like is it considered an invocable even though it's on the client side and it's
I
what
mean, it has that
invokes the expert?
interface.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But it technically is both an invocable and an invoker.
Right.
No, it uses the client instance to do the invoking. So the WASM wrapper is an invocable, and then the client is an invoker.
Yeah, but technically the WASM wrapper invokes the WebAssembly export, the wrap invoke.
Oh, got it. Yeah, that to me is an underlying detail of the invocable. So that's how it performs, like the underlying invocation. Uh, it 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 doesn't mean that it is an invoker, like because that's a different construct.
Yeah, we're just trying to figure out the semantics around it. For example, if you look at the wrap invoke export, it says the invoker calls the wrap invoke export, and actually it's the WASM wrapper class which is the invocable.
Got it. Got it. That makes sense. So I would agree with only referencing here like the invocable implementation. Like yeah. I don't know if we should make reference to invoker here because that's like a higher level construct that doesn't touch WebAssembly directly.
Okay.
So sounds like you're saying we could replace invoker with invocable here, and it's fine.
Yeah, pretty much. Yep.
Okay. Uh, but can or should we make notes or like can we say client, for example, because the invocable wrapper gets the environment that was provided to the client, and the client is what provides the wrapper class with, you know. I mean, we have the WASM wrapper class, and the WASM wrapper class gets the environment from the client. But then in this semantics, the client and the WASM wrapper are two distinct concepts, even though they all happen on the host side. So the client is.
We could say the invocable uses the provided environment configuration object, blah blah blah,
Yeah, I
and
think that
encodes
sounds
it
good.
with. But more importantly, this is the wrapper runtime, and everything here happens in the WASM wrapper. Should we call the WASM wrapper runtime maybe as a class, and then instead of saying invocable without even referring to the invoker, we would be able to just say the wrapper runtime calls the wrap invoke export, or the wrapper runtime uses the environment configuration object.
And technically, the plugin is also an invocable, right? And this only happens for WASM wrappers.
Yeah, that's true too.
Should we call it something else?
Yeah, I think you're
And
saying the WebAssembly invocable runtime uses a provided environment.
and that's what I think I alluded to in one of the earlier calls. Like, it almost seems like the part with WebAssembly instantiating memory and all of that stuff inside of the invoke function in the WASM wrapper class, it seems like to me it should be in a separate class, so that it seems like it happens. Too much happens inside of it that doesn't happen inside of something like a plugin wrap. I don't know, like
Yeah,
we could
that's
have a WASM runtime class that the WASM wrapper class calls in the invoke command.
yeah, I would agree with that. Simplifying the WASM wrapper class, um, creating a separate like WASM runtime. I would agree with that. Yeah.
Then we wouldn't even have to, and this simplifies the standard too, because then we can say just the WASM runtime invokes the whatever, or the wrapper runtime does it.
Yep. Okay. Makes sense.
I wouldn't really use invocable unless we talk about invoker too.
Okay, so should we just say wasm runtime?
Yeah.
Maybe wrapper.
Wrapper.
Yeah. I personally think it's fine to reference invocable here. Like for me, it references the construct that is outside of this that you need to understand in order to know like how you get here. So I don't think there's anything wrong with referencing invocable here. I think it actually is more clarifying. Yeah, and we can link to that specification and everything.
Sure, I slightly disagree, but I think it's minor, so I don't really mind.
Hi, everybody.
Okay.
So, do we want to take the last couple minutes here to take some notes on where we are so we can pick up easier next time, as we had discussed yesterday?
Sure. Sure. Okay. So the notes from today. Yeah, that's what I'd say.
Also, I reordered the diagram. If you look at it for a second, right there where you clicked, line 76. So
Yeah.
now it's create buffer pointer and then encode result to buffer.
Yeah. This is more correct. Yeah. Well, cool.
Awesome. I think that's it, Joe.
Great. Wonderful. Amazing progress again today. Um, I look forward to our early session tomorrow. So we'll be discussing the um, data transit data translation layer. So we'll pick up with that tomorrow. And thanks everybody today for the great progress. And we'll talk tomorrow.
Amazing.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
See you guys.
See you.
Bye, guys.